I'm on book 28 of my Animorphs reread, and I don't really know how to feel about it. Look, I love these books. I have always loved these books, but the series is like pure trauma. Millennials, are we okay? Because I don't think we are okay. Not that that was ever a question. Animorphs is one of those foundational stories that shaped storytelling for me. Look, I know I'm a contemporary romance author, but Animorphs is one of the reasons why I write. So let's dive into the first half of the series together. We're going to talk about the things that I love, the things that I don't love so much, my favorite books in the series so far, and just how dark this series gets. Let's start by ripping off a very important band-aid first. Does Animorphs still hold up? And the only answer to that question is yes. And I don't mean that in a nostalgia glasses kind of way, mind you. I mean that in that this book series was ahead of its time, and nobody ever gives it enough credit. K.A. Applegate and her husband, Michael Grant, wrote a children's book series about war, loss, morality, and the need to fight for something. And us millennials thought it was just a book series about kids who got to be superheroes by turning into animals. Now, before we get to the stuff that I love, I do just want to talk about one thing that I cannot stand. I just need to vent for just a minute. Give me a minute to vent, please. Every single book opens with an explanation of how they got their powers. Book 1, obviously, we have to see them get their powers. Book 5, fine, we're still pretty early in the series, but book 27, come on. If you've been reading through the series at this point, you know how they got their powers over and over and over again. I do not need to be told this many times that a dying alien gave a bunch of kids the power to turn into animals, okay? And look, I get it. These weren't necessarily standalone books, but they were certainly episodic in nature for the most part. So basically a kid could pick up book 15 and not have to have read books, 1 through 14 beforehand. And so they would need that context. It was the publishing model of that book series and really of the time of books in that kind of vein. But rereading it as an adult back to back like this, it's been a lot. Luckily, I'm reading them by listening to the audiobooks this time, and so I just kind of zone out during that portion and then just jump right back into the action. Okay, vent over. Let's gush. Because here's the thing. Once you get past those first few pages or the first few minutes of the audiobook, like me, the actual books are doing something so incredibly special. There is a handful of them that I still remember where I was when I read them. As for the ones that I've read so far, let's start with book 6, The Capture. This is the one that I always say is my favorite, and then I immediately regret it because then I think about the other ones on my favorites list. I digress. This one's my favorite, as well as the other ones. Anyway, Jake gets taken over by a Yeerk in this one. This book honestly scared me as a kid in a way that I couldn't really articulate at the time. The idea of not being in control of your own body, someone else living your life, talking to your parents, going to your school, talking to your friends, living your entire life while you are a prisoner inside your own mind, watching all of it happen, terrifying. It is psychological horror dressed up as a children's book. Rereading this one as an adult really made me appreciate what this one did for me when I was a kid. Like I said before, Animorphs helped shape storytelling for me, and this one is no different. The stakes in this one were real in a way that children's books just aren't. Even some adult books aren't. Plus, this one is the core reason why I now love any good versus evil where the good guy becomes the bad guy, even for just a little while. Book number 7, The Stranger. I did not yet know what existential dread was. I was 10. It was the year I turned 11, but I was still 10 at the time. Then I read this book and my life was changed forever. This book actually though, I do remember the TV episode a lot better than I remembered how the actual book went. So it was really fun to revisit this book and remember specifically the storyline as it was originally depicted in this. Book number 19, The Departure. So I would say Cassie's probably one of the most divisive characters in the Animorphs series. People either love her or find her to be extremely weak. But here's the thing, and this is a hill that I am absolutely willing to die on when it comes to this series, especially this book. She is the most morally sophisticated character in the entire series. Maybe in any series that K.A. Applegate has ever written. The Departure proves my point. In this book, she walks away from the team, befriends a human controller who knows exactly who she is, which is incredibly dangerous, and makes a decision that none of the other characters would ever make. And honestly, she's right. A 12-year-old girl looked at the cost of war and said, "Not like this." That is not weakness. That is incredible strength. Adult me loves these books just as much as kid me did, but now as an adult, I fully understand why. These books trusted kids with topics that most series didn't back then and still don't today. It's almost like watching a Don Bluth movie, probably just as traumatic. They didn't dumb anything down. Applegate wrote characters who made decisions and then had to face the consequences of those decisions. And that's rare in any genre, let alone middle grade, which leads me into the next set of books I'm going to talk about. Because I want to talk about my favorite storyline in the entire series. It is a 3-book arc that is totally unhinged. And I say that with love and a lot of trauma. If you've never read the David Trilogy, let me break it down. So David is a new Animorph. He gets the power, he betrays the group, and then the group has to decide what to do with him. And what they do is something I was not prepared for as a kid, and quite frankly, still makes me very uncomfortable as an adult. The last lines of this book still haunt me to this day. I cried at the end of this book as an adult. The thing is, the David Trilogy doesn't have a clean villain. David is just a kid who got thrown into something that he didn't ask for and cracked under the pressure. And the Animorphs are our heroes who have to do something very dark to solve a problem. At the end of the day, they're just a bunch of kids who are forced to save their world. The allegory of sending young adults into war is not lost on me as an adult. And this trilogy was the first time that the kids were forced to have to make a decision and deal with a problem that they didn't know how to deal with because of the morality of it. And then when push came to shove, they dealt with it in the only way that they could live with. And K.A. Applegate made you feel all of it. Rereading this as an adult, I actually feel even more conflicted than I did when I was a kid, because now I know what it means to be desperate. And this trilogy touches on something that even adult fiction can sometimes be afraid to touch. Good people do bad things sometimes, and it doesn't clean up neatly. So here's where I am after almost 30 Animorphs books into my reread. I am so glad I am doing this. There are times where something that you loved as a kid should definitely just stay a memory instead of coming into your adult life. Again, this holds up. Yes, the exposition intros are still maddening, but the books are dark in the best possible way. And my childhood favorites are still my favorites, and they still matter to me. And now I can see them for what they are, which makes me love them even more now than I did then. Again, K.A. Applegate and her husband created a series that trusted kids. She didn't shy away from the horrors of war or what happens to young people when they're thrust into something that they're not ready for. This book series explores all the different ways people can cope. Jake having to take on a leadership role that he'd never asked for. Tobias dealing with PTSD and depression. And Rachel, well, we'll get to that one. This book series covers everything from consent to love to genocide, all of it, and unapologetically. Not to mention, we should be reading books from authors who are true allies of the LGBTQ+ community, as K.A. Applegate has shown time and time again that she is, instead of putting on those nostalgia glasses for things like Harry Potter, because that turf doesn't deserve a single dime. Speaking of which, instead of spending time watching that new Harry Potter series, it was recently announced that Animorphs is coming out with a new series on Disney+, obviously not sponsored in any way, shape, or form. And I am cautiously optimistic? Yeah, we'll go with that. But seeing anyone but Shawn Ashmore as Jake is gonna be tough. At the end of the day, I'm gonna keep going with this reread. I have 26 mainline books left, and yes, I am reading the Megamorphs and the Chronicles as well. The back half of the series gets darker and even more profound, and not everyone gets out of it alive. So if you want to follow along, hit the subscribe button, because I will be talking about the back half of the series in another video, as well as the new series when that comes out, and maybe even the old series if that's something that interests you. So drop your favorite Animorphs book in the comments below so we can reminisce and trauma bond together. I'll see you next Thursday. Bye.